Can we sit with you? The little girl's voice was so soft that half the crowded diner didn't hear it. The other half did. And when the single father sitting alone looked up, everyone expected him to smile and say yes. Instead, he stared at the two children standing beside his table and quietly said, "No, I'm sorry. You can't." The little girl froze. Her younger brother tightened his grip on her hand. A spoon stopped halfway to someone's mouth. Even the waitress behind the counter looked shocked. Then the little girl lowered her eyes and whispered, "Okay." She turned to leave, and the man suddenly stood so fast his chair scraped across the floor. Wait. But by then, the damage had already been done. His name was Daniel Brooks, 39 years old, a city bus mechanic, and father to 8-year-old Lily. For nearly 4 years, Daniel had raised her alone. His wife, Emma, had died after a sudden illness that began with what everyone thought was an ordinary fever. One week, she was laughing in their kitchen. 2 weeks later, Daniel was learning how to sign papers he could barely read through his tears. Since then, life had become a collection of small battles. Packing Lily's lunch before sunrise, working 10-hour shifts surrounded by engines and grease, picking up extra repairs on weekends, pretending everything was okay when bills piled up. And every Thursday evening, no matter how tired he was, Daniel took Lily to Miller's Diner. They always sat in the same booth. Table 7. It was where Emma had taken Lily for the first time when she was 3. It was where Lily learned to drink through a straw without squeezing the cup too hard. It was where, on their last family dinner, Emma had made Daniel promise something. Not to remarry, not to become rich, not to keep Lily from feeling sad. Just one thing. Don't let grief turn you into someone who stops letting people in. Daniel had promised. But promises were easier to make before grief moved into your home. Tonight, Lily wasn't with him. She was at a school science camp, her first overnight trip away from Daniel. And for the first time in years, he had come to table 7 alone. That was why he had said no. Not because he hated children, not because he was cruel, but because the empty seat across from him was the one place in the world where he still allowed himself to miss his wife. And he wasn't ready to share it. The little girl and her brother had almost reached the door when Daniel caught up with them. "Hey," he said. They turned. Daniel looked at the girl. She couldn't have been older than 10. Her brother was maybe 6. "I'm sorry," Daniel said. "That came out wrong." The girl gave him a small, polite smile. "It's okay, sir." "No," Daniel said. "It isn't." Before he could say anything else, a woman hurried toward them. She looked exhausted. Her coat was still damp from the cold outside, and worry sat heavily in her face. "Grace." "Noah," she said. "I told you not to bother people." The little girl quickly shook her head. "We weren't bothering him, Mom." But Daniel knew exactly what had happened. The diner was packed. Every booth was full, and the family of 3 had nowhere to sit. The woman looked embarrassed. "We can wait." Daniel glanced back at table 7, then at the children, and something inside him twisted. "Actually," he said, "there's room." Grace looked surprised. Daniel led them back to his booth. But when they reached it, he didn't sit down. He pulled his chair away. "You 3 take it." The woman immediately protested. "No, we can't take your table." Daniel shrugged. "I was leaving anyway." That was a lie. His untouched coffee had gone cold, and he had nowhere else to be. But he left. Or at least, he tried to. "Sir." Daniel turned. Grace was holding something in her hand. His wallet. He must have dropped it. Daniel took it, thanked her, and walked toward the door. Then Grace said something that made him stop. "My dad used to sit at that table too." Daniel slowly looked back. Her mother's face changed. "Grace." But the girl continued. "Every Friday, after my grandma died." Daniel felt the air leave his chest. Grace looked toward table 7. He said it was the only place where he could still hear her laugh. For a moment, Daniel couldn't speak. Then the woman quietly explained. Her name was Maria. Her husband had died 8 months earlier in a highway accident. Since then, money had been tight. Their apartment heating had broken that week, and the landlord had told them it would be another day before repairs were finished. They had come to the diner simply to stay warm. Daniel looked at Noah. The boy was rubbing his hands together. Suddenly, Daniel felt ashamed of how quickly he had protected his own pain. But then came another twist. The waitress rushed toward Maria. "I'm sorry," she said, lowering her voice. "Your card was declined." Maria went pale. Daniel saw the moment Grace understood. Children notice more than adults think. Maria reached into her purse, searching desperately for cash. Daniel walked back to the counter. Put their meal on my bill. Maria immediately shook her head. You don't have to do that. I know. I'll pay you back. Daniel looked at the children. No. Maria's eyes narrowed, confused. Daniel gave a tired smile. You won't. She opened her mouth to argue. Then Daniel added, but someday, if someone else needs help, you can sit with them. Maria said nothing. Neither did Daniel. Because sometimes gratitude is too large for words. A week passed. Then another. Daniel returned to Miller's every Thursday with Lily. But he never saw Maria or the children again. Life returned to normal. Or what passed for normal. Then Lily came home from school one afternoon with a folded piece of paper. Dad, I got picked. For what? The science camp scholarship. Daniel smiled. That's amazing. But Lily wasn't smiling. I can't go. Daniel frowned. Why not? It costs money. Daniel had thought the scholarship covered everything. It didn't. It covered tuition, but transportation and equipment still cost more than he could manage. He told Lily they would figure it out. But that night, after she fell asleep, Daniel sat at the kitchen table and stared at the numbers. No matter how he moved them around, they didn't change. He could pay for the camp, or the overdue electricity bill, not both. The next morning, Daniel made the choice no father wanted to make. He told Lily she couldn't go. She nodded. Too quickly. That hurt worse than crying. 3 days later, Daniel arrived home from work and found a box outside his apartment door. Inside was a brand new backpack, a microscope kit, a train ticket, and an envelope. Daniel's hands began to shake as he opened it. Inside was a single note. You said someday, if someone needed help, we should let them sit with us. There was no signature, but tucked beneath the note was a child's drawing. 3 people sitting at a diner booth, and a 4th chair pulled back. Daniel knew. Grace. He sat down on the floor with the note in his hands. Lily came running out. Dad. Daniel quickly wiped his eyes. She saw the box. Her face lit up. Is this mine? Daniel looked at her. Then at the empty chair in the kitchen where Emma used to sit. For years, he had believed grief meant protecting what was left. Protecting memories. Protecting pain. Protecting the empty spaces. But maybe Emma had been right. Maybe the empty spaces weren't meant to stay empty forever. Not because the people we lose are replaced, but because love was never supposed to stop with us. The following Thursday, Daniel and Lily went to Miller's diner. Table 7 was waiting. Daniel sat down. Lily slid into the booth across from him. Then she looked around the crowded room. Dad. Yeah. A young mother stood near the entrance with a tired-looking little boy. Every table was full. Lily smiled. Can we ask them to sit with us? Daniel looked at his daughter. And this time, he didn't hesitate. He pulled back the empty chair. Absolutely. Because some people enter our lives asking for a seat. And sometimes, without realizing it, they give us something far greater in return. They remind us that the heart doesn't heal by forgetting who we lost. It heals when we finally find the courage to make room for someone else.